In this episode, I speak to Jenny Toh about what's behind the facade. This is a conversation about imposter syndrome. Where does it come from? How is it formed? And what do you do about it? We also discuss how to empower someone and how to find out what your values are. Listen up to the rest of the conversation. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by Mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today our guest is Jenny Toh. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Jude.
How you doing?
I'm good. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because you've had quite the journey. So before we begin, though, who are you?
Well, my name's Jenny Toh. I live in Singapore, and I would say for the better part of my adult years, I studied law and I was practicing as a lawyer for close to 24 years now. But I have now moved into what I call as my second career. I am now a certified coach by the International Coaching Federation, and I have been coaching for about 2 going on 3 years now. I started my business at the peak of the pandemic last year. So you could call me a lawyer turned life coach.
Brilliant. Well, that's interesting. Starting a new business in the middle of the first part of a pandemic, not knowing when it's going to end, not knowing what it means. Why did you do that?
Well, my legal training, I did all the legal prep work in January 2020. And I'm also a perfectionist, so I made sure that, all the plans to launch the business was going to take place at a certain date. And I was also designing my website with a website designer who, actually was living in London. So it's great that we can still connect virtually and remotely. So the plan was to launch in April because I checked for the accounting year as well. So as you can see, I did a lot of planning. And then when COVID hit, globally in March 2020, I had to think, do I postpone it or do I go ahead with it? I'm a Christian, so I did a lot of prayer as well because I moved into this profession of coaching, believing that this is my calling right now in this season of my life. And I felt that, yes, there's all these fears and uncertainty, but if I don't move ahead, I knew that I would regret it. And that's what kept me going.
Brilliant. Okay, then. So what type of coach are you?
I'm a life coach, and I coach mainly professionals, naturally people in the legal industry, because that is where my network lies. But I also coach people from different industries as well. Now that I've put myself out in social media and word of mouth, and there's been referrals. The people I coach are largely women. It's not that I don't coach men, but naturally women tend to feel more comfortable with me because I give them that safe space. They know that I listen with empathy and without judgment. And I always have a knack to hear, what's not being said, what's their underlying beliefs. I can somehow pick that up quite easily. So when I reflect back what they are saying with their underlying beliefs, they're quite surprised. They often say that, oh, but Jenny, we've just been talking for the past 20 minutes and you've spotted this in me. I never knew that this came up so strongly. So that's my gift.
Okay, well, that sounds good. So do you have people that struggle with successes, or because I know a lot of coaches talk about imposter syndrome. Is that something that you see?
I do coach successful women, those in the legal industry, those in the banking industry. And yes, it's interesting that you bring it up, Jude. These women, if you're looking at them, you would think that they have everything. They're successful, they've got a beautiful family, and everything seems to be going well for them. But when you talk to them in the privacy of a coaching session, it turns out that they suffer from doubting of themselves. At times, they feel that are they actually really who they are, or are they just putting up a front? It's almost like they believe that they are frauds, hence imposter syndrome. And they also worry that they will be found out by the people around them, that people will start thinking that, oh, okay, this person really doesn't know as much as she claims. But a lot of this is their beliefs. It's how they judge themselves. It's definitely not supported by facts, but sometimes you are so blinded by your beliefs that you cannot see the truth of the situation.
So I've always been a bit confused about imposter syndrome, on the basis that if you have evidence that you're good at something, why would you think you're not? I don't really understand.
It's your belief. I hear what you're saying, Jude, that defies logic, right? I mean, if I hold a PhD and I lecture at universities, a lot of impressive women actually suffer from the imposter syndrome. It defies logic, but your belief is so strong that, surely I don't deserve to be here. It must be luck. Oh, so and so helped me out because of my background or my connection. So women with imposter syndrome tendencies tend to think their successes are not solely based on their own efforts. They feel that it's contributed by someone else, or it's just, sheer luck, or I was at the right place at the right time. So they discount it. What I do with my clients when I see they have this trait is to challenge them, to ask them to challenge themselves, to say that, is it true that, this success that you have really didn't come from you, that is just pure luck? Of course, in the beginning, if their belief is really deep-seated in them, they will say, yes, it's true, I wouldn't have made it today if it weren't for A, B, C, D. But you probe them gently, just to ask them again, is it true that really, if all these factors are not supporting you, you wouldn't have made it? So there's a lot of gentle nudging and helping them see that perspective until they come to a point when they are able to say themselves, no, it's not 100% true. It may be true in certain situations of my life, but if I look at this particular success, it is all me. So I encourage them to acknowledge their own successes, big or small. So usually we start with small successes because it's a bit easier for women to acknowledge small successes, and then to recognize that it is okay to appreciate and acknowledge and affirm oneself. You don't have to beat yourself up all the time.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So does it stem from childhood then? Is it something that has been this imposter syndrome? Does that feeling of a fraud not being able to do something under your own power, does that come from how your parents raised you, or the teachers said that you were rubbish or something? Where does it come from?
It could come from various factors, yes. So it could come from your upbringing, and it could come from your surroundings, the type of environment that you're exposed to. But a lot of times, it also comes from your own personality, how you view things. So, for example, I'm an introvert, and I do take a lot of things internally, and I mull over them, and I reflect, and I probably think of various angles at it, and I spend a lot of time in myself thinking through things. So I think for introverts, they tend to really go deep. So at times, we tend to be quite critical of ourselves because we think a lot, and we question a lot of things that happen around us. I'm not saying that extroverts don't suffer from imposter syndrome, but it could be the way we look at the world and how we grew up looking at our worlds. So there are a lot of factors. I mean, there's been research and studies on it. So it's no one can really pinpoint what caused it, and it's almost to say that there's no one single cause.
Thank you for that. I think it's interesting for me because Mavericks tend to value their own opinion over other people's opinions. So therefore, they're not being influenced by others saying, I don't know, you only got here because you're lucky, or you don't deserve it, or that kind of negativity has no real impact on how they see themselves. So if Mavericks are really, really focused on their own beliefs over others, can you say, why do those that have beliefs on imposter syndrome, why do they have them, and what does it mean to have imposter syndrome?
There are definitely several factors affecting how imposter syndrome shows up in a person. It could be your upbringing, the environment that you were brought up in. It could be something someone said to you, and then you reflected on it, and it stuck. So there's been quite a lot of studies and research on it, but no one can really say what's the one single cause. But imposter syndrome shows up in quite a lot of intellectual, powerful women in positions of senior management in organizations, and even in governments. So people externally don't think that these women are actually frauds, or that they are imposters. It's more of their own belief that they are. And it's quite deep-seated belief, and they believe that I need to put up a strong front. I need to push myself to be even better, because if I don't do that, someone will eventually find out that I'm a fraud. So it's a lot of it is what's happening internally in themselves.
That makes sense. So one of the things that you say that you do is empower women to do their true calling. There are a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are either leaders or aspiring leaders. How do you go as a leader to empower people? How do you empower people?
Well, first, I will bring that person to discover, or perhaps rediscover, what he or she thinks is the core values that they hold true in their lives. So we all are so busy, and before you know it, we live day to day without realizing that our lives are not actually aligned with our core values. So I take my clients to the very beginning to start discovering where their core values are. A lot of times when I ask women in particular what your core values are, they almost the majority of the times will talk about their strengths. So it's different. So you probably say, I am strategic, I am efficient, I manage stress very well. So those are your skills, your strengths, perhaps your attribute, but they're not really your values. So, for example, one of my core values is honesty, how I show up authentically, professionally and also personally. So Jude, the person you are speaking to now is the same person, if I'm giving another training or webinar, and the same person who's the mom to the 3 kids I have. Yes, there will be different nuances, but that's my value. So I know that if I don't show up with honesty and authenticity, something feels not quite right. So when I was thinking of transitioning from my legal career to life coaching, there were doubts to think that, why would I switch careers to something that is so new? But I felt that, if I continued on doing law, I still love practicing law. I mean, it intellectually challenges me, but it's just this phase of my life that I feel that it's the passion that I want to live out to help women discover their values. And from knowing really sure what their values are, they can chart their life goals, their career goals. So how a leader shows up in an organization, it stems from their values. So if you have very strong values that honors teamwork, and building up engagement, if that's really something as your value, that you want all your employees to be engaged, then you will work on that value and how you can build that out and how you can show your values to your organization.
That sounds good. Why did you decide to stop being a lawyer?
Like I said, I'm a Christian, so with lots of prayer and also thinking practically how to go about doing it. It was just this feeling that I have in the beginning, and I pushed it aside because I felt that seriously, I don't think I want to do this because I'm busy. I have a full-time job. I've got 3 kids. So I was trying to push it away. So I was first bitten by the coaching bug, as you would call it, back in 2015 when I was a manager in an organization and I was trained with some coaching skills to better manage my direct reports. So that was when I first learned about coaching. But then after that, I thought, okay, that's a good skill to learn, and I pushed it aside. So it was around December 2018 that I felt this this urge that I cannot push it away anymore, because my value of being authentic to myself, it just doesn't feel quite right. And I wrote in my website at that point of time, if you look at me from the outside, you think that I have everything, but deep inside I felt that something was missing. Yeah, something's not quite right. And it's because in this phase of my life, I wasn't living my life as aligned with my values, and I really want to empower and help people to also discover their values and then to be able to live lives more aligned with their values.
That's really interesting, because one of the things I talk about a lot as Maverick leaders is that alignment to values. Maverick leaders do that really naturally. And I'm curious to know whether you believe there's a way of doing it. Is there like a 5-step process or philosophy? Just wondered if somebody's sitting there with their notebook and their pen out going, right, how do I do this? What would you say?
Oh, okay. Interesting that you would ask, Jude. I mean, you don't really need to think too hard about it. If you just reflect on how you've lived your life up to today, you would notice there are trends, there are repeat occurrences, that themes that show up. And how do you identify your values? They are just actually simple words. So some people might say that their value is love, and their value is justice. So what I do for my clients, there is this free survey. It's called Values in Action Survey, and it is from the University of Pennsylvania, based on positive psychology methodology. So you just it's free. So you just go there, create an account, and then you can do this Values in Action survey. And then it's about 90 questions and simple questions to answer. Is strongly agree, strongly disagree to sentences that they give you, and they'll give you a report of your top 24 values in action. So typically I work with my clients to go through their 5 and see whether these 5 values resonate with them, and whether they see these values showing up in their lives. Yeah, so I have personally taken the Values in Action survey about 4 times so far in a period of over 8 years. And my top 5 values have always been the same 5, but they may have changed in terms of, position or standing. So it's nice to know that, my values, despite going through different things in different phases of my life, they still remain the same. Yeah. And there are many other assessments out there, but I like this because it is simple. And I always tell my client, just do it in one sitting without thinking too much. So Jude, being intellectual yourself, you probably find that, maybe I need to put more thought into this, but no, you just go by your feelings, and then just do the survey and see what comes up. So that's the starting point. But I also have clients who are very clear on what their values are, and they can tell me that I do need that intellectual stimulation. I value intellectual conversations. If I don't have that, then I find that I really am not happy. So we work on that, how to because as you know, if you overuse your values, and in certain circumstances you may come out a bit too strong. So you do need to adjust. I'm not saying compromise, but you do need to adjust how you show up your values in the different situations in your life.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And do you have a tip that you could leave for someone who is struggling with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so it's what I shared earlier. Let me see now. If you did a presentation and everyone said that was amazing, that was really well done, and you feel that, oh my goodness, if only they knew, that I feel so much like a fraud. I would coach that person to ask, is it true that I didn't know what I was doing and I was a fraud? So bring them factually. So you can ask the question to yourself, is it true that, that depending on your situation, keep questioning it like you are an investigator. I'm not saying you be harsh on yourself, but just, investigate it like you are exploring and you want to find out the facts of the situation. So if this person who did this great presentation, if truly this person explored, she would have known that, she spent hours preparing for it. She did the research. She probably had to interview people, and she collated it, and she put together a beautiful PowerPoint presentation. She practiced. So with all this, hearing the person recount all this, in a way, it will help dispel the imposter syndrome thoughts, because you're hearing, and I reflect that back to the client as well, and hearing another person saying your own words and your own thoughts back, that's very powerful, because it's as though that, you are hearing your own perspective from someone else. So question yourself, is it true that I'm really a fraud, that I don't know what I'm doing, that I'm an imposter? Just question yourself. So it's all about making sure that you have the right evidence. Yes, and also not all or nothing. I mean, in bigger situations like, I did my PhD and then, I still feel like an imposter syndrome. Then you ask, is it true all the time that I'm an imposter? So the answer is, maybe in the beginning they'll say yes, but if you keep going on this train of thought, it is not true all the time. Then you start seeing that you are actually successful in your own right.
Brilliant. So, will you come back again if I find something else to discuss?
Sure.
Fantastic. Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Jenny as much as I enjoyed having it. At the Maverick Paradox, we improve your impact and influence by enabling you to effectively strategize, innovate, and execute. To find out more, contact us at judith@maverickparadox.com. Are you interested in Maverick leadership but unsure how to apply it? We can help. Judith Germain has collaborated with David Chislett to produce a 12-part video series on Maverick leadership and how to apply it to your creative thinking skills. This will truly get you thinking and putting into action your ability to innovate and execute, truly changing your outcomes. Check out the show notes for the link or contact us on judith@maverickparadox.com for more information. If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick Paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. Finally, if you would like to work with us or are interested in the Maverick at work, check out maverickparadox.co.uk.